My name is Ethan, and for 3 years, I believed I had mastered the future of finance. I was an early, fervent believer in Nexus, a decentralized finance protocol that promised stability, high returns, and absolute transparency, a true bank run by code, not greed. Nexus wasn't some volatile meme coin. It was built on robust, audited smart contracts, backed by billions, and heralded as the impenetrable fortress of the decentralized web. I had invested $500,000, the vast majority of my liquid net worth, savings and retirement, into Nexus's stable yield farms, confident that code was far more secure than any central bank. I slept soundly, trusting the algorithms and the immutable ledger to guard my future better than I ever could myself. I often dismissed my friends' warnings about crypto volatility, telling them Nexus was algorithmic gold, shielded by mathematics. That confidence shattered on a rainy Thursday morning at 3:17 a.m., when mathematics turned into a catastrophic, instantaneous weapon. I was jolted awake not by an alarm, but by the relentless, shrill screaming of my custom-coded trading bot, which I had set to alert me to any massive, sudden liquidity withdrawals. My phone screen was a flash of aggressive red and urgent notifications. The Nexus protocol's primary stable token was undergoing a catastrophic, unprecedented depeg. My heart instantly pounded against my ribs. A depeg was bad, but the speed of the drop, 15% in 2 minutes, was utterly impossible under normal market conditions. I scrambled out of bed, adrenaline instantly flooding my system, rushing to my desktop where the larger trading dashboard was laid out. The real-time data streaming across the screen was a blur of negative figures and accelerating panic. This wasn't volatility. This was a coordinated, deliberate financial assassination. I immediately slammed the keyboard, trying to log into the Nexus interface, my mind racing through exit strategies and stabilization protocols. The interface was sluggish, freezing, and spitting out error messages, a terrifying sign that the network was already entirely overloaded by an unprecedented volume of transactions. I finally managed to refresh the main dashboard, and the numbers were instantly devastating. The price had dropped another 20%, pushing the entire protocol into absolute imminent freefall. The panic wasn't being driven by individual users. It was being driven by massive, professional bots, algorithms executing billions of dollars in trades instantly. This was a phantom bank run, an invisible stampede of automated code exploiting a weakness no human could have possibly reacted to in time. I was watching my entire financial future being dismantled by an enemy that moved at the speed of light. I instantly tried to initiate a simple emergency withdrawal, my finger hovering over the sell all button, desperately hoping to salvage even a fraction of the original capital. The system instantly gave me a crucial error. Transaction failed. Gas too high. The criminals executing the attack had spiked the network's transaction fees to an astronomical level. It was a brilliant, cruel tactic. They used massive volume to destroy the price, and then they priced out the very victims they were robbing. Any human-initiated withdrawal transaction was now too slow and too expensive to complete before the ultimate collapse. I was locked inside the burning building, with the thieves holding the only key to the only emergency exit. 90 seconds. That was the lifespan of my digital. The next 30 seconds were a blur of absolute, frantic powerlessness. The protocol's entire market capitalization was evaporating faster than my eyes could register the falling numbers. I immediately opened the public chat channel for the Nexus community, hoping for clarity, stability, or some kind of official intervention from the core developers. The chat was a maelstrom of raw, digital terror, thousands of users realizing the awful, shared truth at the exact same moment. Messages scrolled by in a chaotic, desperate stream. Scam. Hacked. Zero. There was no CEO, no central authority to reassure the crowd, only decentralized chaos and the cold, immutable logic of the failing code. The beauty of the decentralized system, its lack of control, had suddenly become its fatal, terrifying flaw. I watched the core Nexus token price flash from 95 cents down to 21 cents in what felt like a single, agonizing breath. My $500,000 was now theoretically worth around $100,000, but I knew the number was entirely meaningless. There was no liquidity left to buy or sell. The bots had drained the pools, ensuring that the remaining tokens were utterly worthless husks. I leaned back in my chair, the sudden loss hitting me with the force of a physical impact. The screen had turned into a cold, hard tombstone. My entire life savings, the funds intended for my daughter's college and my parents' medical care, were utterly gone. The dream of algorithmic financial freedom had collapsed into a nightmare of algorithmic tyranny. It wasn't a slow crash. It was an instantaneous, total digital execution. The final, absolute collapse took only a few more seconds. The Nexus trading pair was officially halted on every major exchange. The price, now functionally zero, flatlined. The developers, the anonymous, trusted creators of the protocol, finally posted a brief, brutal message in the main community channel. The message confirmed the awful truth. A critical exploit had been found and leveraged by sophisticated, coordinated actors. There would be no bailout. There would be no central bank intervention. The money was simply gone, absorbed into the labyrinthine wallets of the automated attackers. The code had been law, and the code had been broken. I sat there in the dark, silent office, staring at the motionless screen. The entire sequence of destruction, from the first alarm to the final flatline, had lasted barely 90 seconds. No human had the physical or mental capacity to react to a financial collapse occurring at the speed of machine computation. The algorithmic thieves didn't operate on human time. They operated on nanosecond efficiency, exploiting the network before any human eye could even verify the price change. My loss wasn't due to poor judgment or bad luck. It was due to my inherent human slowness against a superior, automated predator. The entire decentralized system, designed to be fair, had merely substituted human greed for algorithmic efficiency. I had put my trust in the future, and the future had systematically robbed me. The aftermath was deafeningly quiet. The frantic alerts had stopped, replaced by the low, steady hum of my expensive, now useless server farm. I checked the block explorer, the public record of the network, and saw the cold digital trail of the collapse. The exploit was a flash loan attack, a clever use of borrowed funds to manipulate the protocol's internal price feeds and trigger the fatal cascade. The entire complex sequence of transactions, which required millions in capital and perfect timing, had been completed in 2 atomic blocks, less than 30 seconds of compute time. It was a stunning, if criminal, masterpiece of technical brilliance. They hadn't hacked the code, they had perfectly played the code. The sheer scale and speed of the digital crime were beyond anything I had ever conceived. I immediately called my financial advisor, Maria, even though I knew she couldn't help. The conversation was agonizingly brief and punctuated by my shaky voice. "It's gone, Maria," I finally managed to say. "The Nexus protocol. It just failed." Maria was speechless for a long moment. Then her voice dropped to a quiet, defeated tone. "Ethan, decentralized finance has no FDIC. There's no recovery fund. It's a total loss." The immense finality of her words was a gut punch. There was no insurance claim, no government agency, no central bank to appeal to for help. The promise of financial sovereignty also carried the burden of absolute risk. I was financially sovereign, and now I was financially ruined. The entire community quickly devolved into a maelstrom of lawsuits, conspiracy theories, and desperate online pleas. Some tried to argue the code was a security, meaning the SEC should intervene, while others simply hunted for the wallets of the anonymous developers. The core team issued a formal, cold statement. They regretted the exploit, but the code was immutable, and funds were irrecoverable. They vanished into the digital ether. The beauty of the trustless system meant there was no one to trust and no one to sue. The contract was the law, and the contract offered no recourse. I had believed in the cold, hard logic of the blockchain, and it had returned that coldness with brutal, absolute logic. My entire life savings were now nothing more than a few lines of data on a public ledger, proving exactly when and how I lost everything. I spent the next 2 weeks in a paralyzing haze of absolute denial and profound black despair. I couldn't bear to look at the financial dashboard, which now only showed a near-zero balance. I felt a crippling shame, not just for the loss, but for the profound hubris of believing I was smarter than the established financial system. I had ridiculed the banks, laughed at the slowness of Wall Street, and now I was a victim of a financial collapse executed faster than any trade on the NYSE. The worst feeling was the immense powerlessness of knowing my entire fate was decided by a superior, unfeeling algorithm. The thieves had exploited a bug in the code, but the real flaw was the human speed of the user. The human reaction was the only thing that moved slowly enough for me to witness. I watched the online community tear itself apart, shifting from shared panic to bitter accusation. The shared faith in Nexus crumbled into a toxic mixture of anger and blame. The real tragedy was the small investors who lost their homes, their college funds, and their family futures, all because they trusted the promise of an unhackable future. My $500,000 loss was immense, but for some, the loss of $5,000 was total ruin. The entire decentralized world had promised democratization of finance, but it delivered only the democratization of catastrophe. I finally unplugged my server, the low hum of the machine finally silenced. The vast digital world that had promised so much was now a place of immense silence and total emptiness. I was left with the cold, hard reality. My net worth had been erased by a financial attack completed in the time it takes to brew a cup of coffee. The lesson was brutal and absolute. When speed is the only currency, the human element is simply the vulnerability to be exploited. I had traded the safety of the old world for the efficiency of the new, and the cost was the total destruction of my financial life. I realized I was a casualty of the first true algorithmic bank run, a human victim of a war fought entirely by machines. I am Ethan, and I am now rebuilding my life from zero. I still check the Block Explorer occasionally, but only to confirm the permanence of the loss. My $500,000 is still recorded there, a permanent, immutable digital tombstone marking the time and place of my financial execution. I am the living testament to the sheer, terrifying speed of decentralized financial failure. The only thing faster than the rise of the digital bank was its total, catastrophic collapse. The practical fallout began immediately. My savings, intended for a down payment on a new house and establishing a secure retirement fund, were vaporized. I had to instantly liquidate all remaining physical assets, my car, non-essential belongings, just to cover immediate expenses and avoid defaulting on my current rent. The emotional toll was immense. Every time I saw a news headline about crypto gains or decentralized success, a cold wave of severe nausea would hit me. I felt profoundly betrayed by the very technology I had fiercely championed to my peers and family. The freedom I sought in code had delivered nothing but financial enslavement to debt. I was forced to take a demanding second job, a harsh, physical reminder that I was back to square one. A human laborer paying for a machine's failure. Seeking accountability became a pointless, infuriating crusade. I contacted a dozen legal firms, specializing in everything from securities law to cybercrime. Every single one delivered the same cold, simple verdict: there is no central entity to sue, Elara. The core developers were anonymous, their wallets untraceable after the exploit funds were immediately laundered through complex mixers and foreign exchanges. The smart contract itself was the only entity with legal standing, and it was merely lines of code that had executed as designed, flawed, but operational. The absence of a central authority meant there was no court, no judge, and no human face to hold responsible for my ruin. I realized I was suing the wind, fighting a decentralized ghost that only existed on the global ledger. The psychological burden was the most difficult to process. I started experiencing severe anxiety around technology. Every notification on my phone triggered the panic I felt at 3:17 a.m. I I couldn't look at a real-time stock ticker or a blinking chart without my heart rate immediately spiking. My friends, who had initially been sympathetic, slowly began to distance themselves, unable to handle the intense financial grief and the constant reminder of risk. I felt profoundly isolated, a victim of a crime the traditional world simply couldn't classify or fully comprehend. The loss wasn't just $500,000. It was the entire foundation of trust in my own financial judgment and the belief in a better, automated future. I eventually found a small online support group, a quiet corner of the internet filled with other victims of similar, catastrophic DeFi collapses. We shared stories of despair, legal dead ends, and the unique, frustrating experience of being bankrupted by algorithms. The common thread was always the speed, the devastating truth that the attack was concluded before a human brain could process the immediate danger. This shared vulnerability was a necessary anchor, a space where my shame was immediately understood as shared systemic failure, not personal folly. I learned that I was not a fool. I was a casualty of an ongoing automated financial war where the rules were constantly changing, began to intensely study the exploit, not for legal recourse, but for intellectual understanding and personal closure. I meticulously reread the white papers, the audit reports, and the transcripts of the automated attack. The precision of the algorithmic thieves was chilling. They had leveraged a tiny, minute bug in the way the Nexus contract sourced its external price data. They didn't break the encryption. They didn't brute force the password. They simply used the contract's own logic against itself, perfectly and instantly. The code had not been hacked. It had been played, a beautiful, terrible symphony of automated exploitation. My perspective on money immediately shifted entirely. I no longer saw currency as a fluid digital asset to be optimized. I saw it as a slow, hard-won resource to be guarded with absolute paranoia. I pulled every remaining dollar out of any remotely digital or leveraged position, focusing instead on low-yield, insured traditional banks. The irony was sharp. I had run away from the slowing banking system only to crawl back, begging for the safety of its guarantees. I learned that the promise of high efficiency often comes with the inherent risk of high fragility. I had traded certainty for an illusion of sovereignty, and the market had delivered a swift, brutal lesson. I started a small, anonymous blog detailing my experience, not to beg for money, but to serve as a warning to others seduced by the promise of easy automated wealth. The response was intense. I received messages from hundreds of other DeFi users, all with similar stories of sudden, irreversible, and unrecoverable loss. My story became a viral testament to the dangers of trusting black box algorithms with one's fundamental future. I realized my financial ruin had given me a new, profound purpose as a reluctant prophet of digital risk. The entire ordeal ultimately forced me to rethink the very concept of trust. In the decentralized world, trust is placed solely in the code and the mathematics, not in human beings or institutions. But what happens when the math is flawed or the code is exploited? You are left with absolute nothing. I now understand that true security lies not in the lack of human control, but in the human capacity for accountability and recourse. The old banks might be slow and flawed, but they offered a human face to appeal to, a physical building to enter, and a government guarantee against total failure. I continue to pay off the debts accrued during the initial shock, the sudden bills, the cost of living while unemployed. Every single payment is a harsh reminder of the 90 seconds of catastrophe. I found a sense of strange relief in manual labor and simple, slow tasks that have no algorithm attached to them. The complexity of the decentralized financial world was replaced by the simple, enduring reality of human effort and slow, deliberate savings. I was paying off a debt owed to a machine, but the repayment was grounding me back into the real physical world. My relationship with technology is now fundamentally altered. I use it with profound suspicion, never allowing convenience to outweigh the absolute need for security. I advocate relentlessly for greater transparency and human-readable audits of any smart contract that governs real-world wealth. The dream of instantaneous, optimized financial freedom is dead for me, replaced by the sober, stark reality of human vulnerability in a machine-speed world. I am a survivor of the algorithmic bank run, a living testament to the danger of the future. I am no longer pursuing the rush of massive, fast returns. I am pursuing the quiet, enduring stability that the old world offers. The pursuit of sovereignty cost me everything. Now I seek safety. I learned that speed kills, especially when money is the weapon. The memory of that screen, blinking red as the numbers fell to zero, is my permanent, chilling tombstone on the digital landscape. I am a human who lost a war against bots. The most important thing I saved was not money, but my knowledge. I now use that knowledge to protect others, steering them away from the complex traps and automated predators of the decentralized system. My loss serves a purpose. It provides a real-world human face to the cold, abstract concept of a smart contract failure. I am Ilara, the woman who learned the hard way that when the code fails, the consequences are very human and entirely unforgiving. I still check the Block Explorer sometimes, but now I search for the wallets of the anonymous attackers, not out of revenge, but out of cold, intellectual curiosity. They are wealthy ghosts, protected by the very anonymity I once thought was the system's strength. My $500,000 is still recorded there, a permanent, immutable digital tombstone marking the time and place of my financial execution. It is the only proof I have of a life that once was, a life instantly erased by the logic of a machine. The final lesson of the 90-second collapse is simple. Never trust a system that moves faster than your own fear. When the speed of money exceeds the speed of human response, the human always loses. I will spend the rest of my life rebuilding, one slow, deliberate dollar at a time, away from the flashing lights and promises of the digital frontier. I found freedom not in the absence of a bank, but in the absolute absence of algorithms. I close the laptop, the screen going dark. The silence of the small apartment is heavy, but it is a safe silence. The digital nightmare is over, replaced by the slow, demanding work of the real world. I am Ilara, the survivor of the algorithmic bank run, and I will never trust a piece of code with my future again. I immediately rewrote my entire financial philosophy. I no longer saw currency as a fluid digital asset to be optimized. I saw it as a slow, hard-won resource to be guarded with absolute paranoia. I pulled every remaining dollar out of any leveraged digital position, focusing instead on low-yield, insured, traditional banks. The sharp irony was that I had run from the slow banking system only to crawl back, begging for the safety of its guarantees. The pursuit of sovereignty had cost me everything. Now I sought safety. I started a small, anonymous blog detailing my experience, not to beg for money, but to serve as a public warning to others seduced by the promise of automated wealth. My story became a viral testament to the dangers of trusting black box algorithms with one's fundamental future. I realized my financial ruin had given me a new, profound purpose as a reluctant prophet of digital risk, providing a human face to the cold, abstract concept of smart contract failure. The entire ordeal forced me to rethink the very concept of trust. In the decentralized world, trust is placed solely in the code and the mathematics. But what happens when the math is flawed or the code is exploited? You are left with absolute nothing. I now understand that true security lies not in the lack of human control, but in the human capacity for accountability and recourse that traditional systems, however slow, still offer. I continue to pay off the debts accrued during the initial shock. Every single payment, a harsh, physical reminder of the 90 seconds of catastrophe. I found a strange relief in manual labor and simple, slow tasks that have no algorithm attached to them. The complexity of the decentralized world was replaced by the simple, enduring reality of human effort and slow, deliberate savings. I was paying off a debt owed to a machine, but the repayment was grounding me back into the physical world. My relationship with technology is now fundamentally altered. I use it with profound suspicion, never allowing convenience to outweigh the absolute need for security. I advocate relentlessly for greater transparency and human-readable audits of any smart contract that governs real-world wealth. The dream of instantaneous, optimized financial freedom is dead for me, replaced by the sober, stark reality of human vulnerability in a machine-speed world. I am no longer pursuing the rush of massive, fast returns. I am pursuing the quiet, enduring stability that the old world offers. The memory of that screen, blinking red as the numbers fell to zero, is my permanent, chilling tombstone on the digital landscape. I check the public ledger sometimes, seeing my $500,000 recorded there, an immutable proof of a life erased by a superior algorithm. The most important thing I saved was not money, but my knowledge. I now use that knowledge to protect others, steering them away from the complex traps and automated predators of the decentralized system. My loss serves a purpose. It provides a real-world, human face to the cold, abstract concept of a financial execution. I am Alara, the woman who learned the hard way that when the code fails, the consequences are very human and entirely unforgiving. The final lesson of the 90-second collapse is simple. Never trust a system that moves faster than your own fear. When the speed of money exceeds the speed of human response, the human always loses. I will spend the rest of my life rebuilding, one slow, deliberate dollar at a time, away from the flashing lights and seductive promises of the digital frontier. I found freedom not in the absence of a bank, but in the absolute absence of algorithms. I have made my peace with the fact that my life was changed irrevocably by the logic of a machine. My future is no longer defined by the wealth I sought, but by the quiet, essential work of securing the slow, predictable life I now understand is the most valuable asset of all. I close the laptop, the screen going dark. The silence of the small apartment is heavy, but it is a safe silence. The digital nightmare is over, replaced by the slow, demanding work of the real world. I am Alara, the survivor of the algorithmic bank run, and I will never trust a piece of code with my future again. The pervasive silence of my current life is not an emptiness. It is a deliberate, chosen shield. I avoid news of market fluctuations and tech innovation, understanding that my inner peace requires a distance from the very forces that once nearly destroyed me. I've learned to value the noise of the physical world, the sound of traffic, the hum of the old refrigerator, over the silent, rapid, and deadly efficiency of digital computation. The pervasive silence of my current life is not an emptiness. It is a deliberate, chosen shield. I avoid news of market fluctuations and tech innovation, understanding that my inner peace requires a distance from the very forces that once nearly destroyed me. I've learned to value the noise of the physical world, the sound of traffic, the hum of the old refrigerator, over the silent, rapid, and deadly efficiency of digital computation. I often reflect on the irony of being bankrupted by a system designed for stability. The algorithms that promised protection ultimately acted as the perfect, ruthless predator. The only thing more terrifying than the crime itself was the realization that the exploit, the weakness in the contract, was probably known to the thieves for months, waiting for the precise, automated moment to strike. My former colleagues, still immersed in the DeFi world, see me as a martyr or a cautionary tale. They acknowledge the risk but cling to the immense potential. I see their ambition now as a form of blindness, a failure to grasp that if a system moves too fast for human empathy or intervention, it is inherently unjust. I bear my scar as a warning that their pursuit of efficiency is a gamble with their fundamental humanity. I have sought out and spoken with some of the lead auditors who missed the critical bug in the Nexus code. They are highly intelligent, remorseful, and deeply frustrated. They too are victims of the system's complexity. Their failure wasn't due to negligence, but to the sheer, impossible scale of auditing billions of lines of self-executing, interconnected code. The error was systemic, not personal. The single most difficult thing I had to give up was not the money, but the dream. The intoxicating belief that I could live entirely outside the centralized system free from the failures of governments and banks. That dream died at 3:17 a.m. I now operate within the regulated world, not out of trust, but out of the necessity of insurance and human-enforced law. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had been awake 5 minutes earlier. Could I have won the race? The answer, Dr. Sharma had confirmed in my previous struggle, is no. The algorithmic attack was executed faster than the network could propagate the transaction across nodes. The human hand, the human eye, the human reaction, it was all fundamentally too slow. This realization, the inherent vulnerability of the human being in a machine-speed world, is the ultimate source of my present peace. I stopped fighting a battle I was genetically destined to lose. I withdrew to the realm of slowness and tangibility, where my efforts, however modest, yield predictable and controllable results. The digital tombstone on the Block Explorer, the record of my $500,000 loss, has become my permanent online memorial. It is the immutable proof of my folly and my survival. I use it as the final slide in my occasional anonymous talks, a cold, hard lesson in the ultimate cost of unchecked digital ambition. I am Elara, and I finally understand that the most radical act of rebellion against the algorithmic future is choosing a life of unoptimized stability. I find profound solace in the quiet consistency of slow savings, in the physical weight of currency, and in the fundamental safety that exists outside the blinding speed of the network. My final mission is not to earn back the $500,000, but to ensure that the cold, digital logic of the algorithms never claims another human victim due to sheer, unavoidable speed. I am the survivor of the fastest bank run in history, and I am here to tell you that in the financial future,